The G7, Russia, affecting us here in Europe. We'll get into it, but it's not looking very good.
I guess the next thing we're going to wait to see is when Trump finally rolls that out, and then we'll be able to say no longer this is leaked or that. But here's what he said, and then we can look at it. But Trump is not only in the news today because of this. Trump is also in the G7 here, and I just want to pop this up in here because Zelensky is also there again. I don't know why, but Zelensky says the G7 agreed Russia is not winning the war and discussed more sanctions.
He's an actor. Look at how he got into power. What a helmet.
What do you make about Trump's issue there and about whether or not more sanctions is going to help?
I think President Trump has realized that he's a gargantuan liar. The war is lost. There's no chance for Ukraine in any way, shape, or form militarily to overcome the Russians. I think he knows that. I think he also senses that this is a trip backward in time. It's sort of like going to the Natural History Museum. Who is the G7? They're not necessarily the big movers and shakers they once were. The world has changed a great deal. And you talk about the Japanese. The Japanese are in a very difficult position, and they've made it abundantly clear to us. If you are going to demand that or try to prevent us from having access to Russian oil that we need right now in Japan, well, we'll just sell off the rest of your debt.
And I mean, look at Starmer, man. Look at him, man. And then it was Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, again ran on rallying up the nationalists, the Italians, wanting to get rid of all the migrants, similar to Farage. And what has she done, Dick? Nothing. They're giving more visas. Have you seen footage of Rome recently? Bro, none of them, man. They're all pissing the same pot.
This is, we have a bond market that's very fragile. You turn on, the analyst, pick your analyst, whoever it is, from Ray Dalio to Luke Groman, to Gundlach, any number of them. They'll all come back to the same thing. What's the bond market doing? Because that's been the bellwether for so much in our history. And many of these European states, they have one foot in the financial grave right now. I mean, imagine Starmer showing up for a thing like this. He has about as much credibility as Al Capone. Forget it. So I think President Trump is sort of surveying everything. I think he sort of intuitively grasps some of this. How much, I can't tell you, but I think he gets it. I think he understands this is the past, not the future. And I think he understands that's also true in the Middle East. You can only fight the future so long. And eventually, if you continue to fight it, you will be destroyed by it.
Now, let me ask you this question on the Russia-Ukraine war itself. Obviously, President Trump comes into office and says, yep, I'm going to have this done. We're going to knock it out in one day. And then it was 100 days and ad infinitum. And now here 17 months later, he's basically saying, yeah, I'm washing my hands of it, not doing anything. The day before he left for the G7, it didn't get much press here because so many other things were going on. But Vladimir Putin initiated a phone call. And they talked for about an hour. And Putin was bringing up ways he thought he could try and bring about an end to this. And I think that he did that ahead. He was ostensibly to wish Trump a happy birthday, but it was ahead of the G7. And then you can see the headlines from today. Doesn't seem that released a lot because it says Trump signals swift return to sanctions on Russian oil as G7 refocuses on Ukraine.
What's Zelensky doing there, man? He's an actor. What is he doing there? Look at Trump. Oh, well, man. I mean, I know I'm laughing in that, but this is going to... Honestly, this is going to end very, very bad. Like, I can see it.
And, the whole deal, again, this is I remember, Doug, you and I were talking this well over a year ago, that we keep the Europeans keep going back to that sanctions. The first 18 rounds didn't do anything, and then they came with that round number 19. That was going to do it. Then 20, that wasn't going to do it. And now here 21, they're trying to do another one. I mean, at what point do they just have to see this is just continue to saw off the limb that they're standing on?
You know, FDR at the end of the Potsdam Conference was in pretty bad shape, and it wasn't long before he died. And he was talking to the admiral who functioned as his senior military advisor and also effectively as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And the admiral said to President Roosevelt, you know, Mr. President, these agreements that you've signed with the Soviets, nobody believes that the Soviets will ever honor those agreements. Nobody believes that this is good for the West or for the United States and our allies. And he finally, this is Admiral Leahy, and he finally turned to Admiral Leahy and he said, I know, but I'm just too damn tired to fight anymore. And of course, not long thereafter, he passed away. He was tired. He shouldn't have been president. He should never have had that last term. There's nothing we can do about that. I don't know where President Trump is. I think President Trump is focused very narrowly right now in the Middle East. If he can make some success out of it, perhaps he will then turn his attention back to Ukraine. But for the moment, I think he's decided to fight one event at a time. And so the fact that he says, I'm going to go along with this simply signals that I don't have time to deal with it right now. I'm not going to fight this bunch. I'm going to focus on where I am right now in the Middle East. And I think that's what's happening.
And so the question is going to be, where do we go from here? Because, and I think that there's some justification. I know Gary's looking to see if we have a specific soundbite, because it, based on what you just said there, really, I think it really sounds like he's kind of leaning in that direction. But at some point, he's going to have to do something. I mean, I guess you could just keep trying to kick the can down the road. But, and I'm actually, let me ask it in the form of a question. Can we just kick the can down the road forever and then not worry about it and literally go 2.5 more years for Trump and just let this thing founder? Can we survive that?
Well, I think we can. To be frank with you, in Europe, the deal in Europe for President Trump is as follows. You're dealing with people that are presiding over financial, economic, social, and cultural disasters in their own countries. Most of the leaders who are there at this conference will not last much longer. I'm surprised any of them are still there. When I look at Merz, I'm shocked. When I look at Macron, I can't believe it. And Starmer, insane. So there are going to be major convulsive changes after this G7 across Europe. All you have to do is look at what's happening in Ireland, in Southern Ireland, in Northern Ireland, recently in Glasgow, and you have a news blackout that's being imposed by these globalist leaders that don't want the world to know that inside Germany, inside France, inside the Netherlands, inside Great Britain, there is extreme discontent with what's being done to those societies by this massive immigration problem and the massive mismanagement of finances and the stupidity of trying to cultivate war against Russia.
Sorry for interrupting, but mate, how about yous and the Zionists stop bombing everywhere? Stop making all these wars? Stop displacing all these people? 1.2 million. The Zionists have displaced out of Lebanon. How about stop that?
So those things are underway. Now, does President Trump get a briefing on this? Does anybody tell him about that? I don't know. But I think for the reasons that I just said, much of what's wrong in Europe is going to be solved. It's not going to be solved through military force. It's not going to be solved by the Russians or us. It's going to be solved internally in these countries. And the governments that come to power are going to be singularly disinterested in going to war with Germany because their populations with Russia, because their populations don't want to go to war. Aliza Vital has given a couple of really excellent speeches. Whether or not she ever emerges to lead that country, I don't know, and we'll see. But she has pointed the way, and she is the beginning of the change, not just in Germany, but I think across Europe, where she is saying, look, as soon as we have power in Berlin, we're going to Russia. And we're going to work out new arrangements. We want to import energy. We want to end the deindustrialization of Germany. We want to put people back to work. and we're going to tackle this ugly, difficult issue of rounding up millions of people that don't belong in this country, who should never have been admitted, and sending them home. These are the things that she's saying, because they've got to restore the rule of law in Germany.
But again, sorry, that's exactly what the Italian Prime Minister said. That's exactly what Starmer said. This is what Farage is saying. There needs to be, I'm of the opinion, let the women and kids come. If we're bombing their countries, the women and children can come. But when it's just young men coming on boats, the undesirables, no wonder France want them out. This is what's causing the problems. But who profits from it all? That's what you've got to be asking.
Now, you and I lived in Germany. I've spent almost 8 years of my life living off and on in Germany. That's a country where until 2015, even earlier than that, you never had to worry about the rule of law. I mean, you had policemen that could never be bribed. They wouldn't even think about it. There was no corruption, and the enforcement of the law was immediate, uniform, just, and effective. That's changed, and they've got to get that back. They know that. So I think Europe is poised for revolutionary change on the scale of 1848. And that's going to solve some of these problems. When I say some of them, I'm talking about the problem of war with Russia. That's going to go away, absolutely go away. And when that happens, Zelensky's funds dry up and Zelensky has no support. He'll find an aircraft, I'm sure, and fly somewhere fast to get out of town. He'll look like our friends in Kabul at the end, believe me. He has no support in Western Ukraine. The people there are sick of it. You've seen the photographs. You've seen the video footage. People don't want anything to do with this war. And he's trying to push the Europeans to send Ukrainians that are overseas, men, young single men, back to fight.
That's it. He's trying to get the diaspora to go back. He's trying to force them. Have you not seen the footage of the military police in Ukraine? Dragging men, kicking and screaming. You will die for us. Crazy.
Well, I think they'd like to push a lot of these young single Ukrainians out so they could open up jobs for their own people. But I don't think they're going to send Ukrainians to die pointlessly in eastern Ukraine in a war with Russia that Ukraine has no chance of winning. I think President Trump gets that. But again, why should he wrap himself around the telephone pole at this point over that? He's got problems in the Middle East he's got to solve. And I think he's going to try that first.
Yeah, well, we certainly wish him well on that front as well. Interesting. So President Trump apparently on the margins of the G7 met briefly with Zelensky. Who knows what he said? We'll have to wait and see. But here's what he said a couple of days ago on the Ukraine situation.
Are you going to have a special focus on Ukraine? Well, we're going to look. Now we were focused on Iran. That's going to be in the back, in the rear view mirror. But we have nothing to do with it. We sell weapons to them. We don't even give them. Obama gave them $350 billion worth of what gave, which was crazy. The European Union pays us full price for weapons. But it's not that. It has no impact on us other than we sell weapons. We're thousands of miles away.
Our taxpayer money goes to this shit.
All right, Gary had one from today. That's not from a couple of days ago.
No.
That's from today.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Woodrow Wilson opened his credit markets to France and Great Britain, and he also opened them to Germany. But he knew during World War I that the Germans were not going to be able to get out of Germany and come to the United States to gain access to credit from us. And so what did he do? He effectively aligned us early on with the British and the French in their war with Germany. That was dishonest and it was destructive, because within 6 months, France and Great Britain were running out of money. The French president in 1914, when he was asked after the war began, how long will this last? He said, well, 6 to 8 months. After that, there is no money. Well, we made up the deficit. So we kept the First World War going and we profited from it, exactly as President Trump is talking about it. It's morally reprehensible. It's wrong. And he should not do that. But morally reprehensive acts are pretty commonplace inside the Beltway, and self-enrichment seems to outweigh any moral consideration these days on either side of the aisle. But I think people need to understand that we were instrumental in making this war in 1914 last as long as it did, and ultimately in the complete destruction of Central East Europe as a result. And we know what that meant. It brought communism to power in Russia and eventually National Socialism to power in Berlin. Dumb, stupid, foolish. So he needs to cut it off. And that's what he should do as soon as possible. You talk about how important it is to cut off the Israelis from the funds and the munitions and the weapons that they are using to destroy their neighbors. It's no less important to cut off Ukraine. If you don't do it, eventually the Russians, and I think reality will set in with Europe, but more people will die needlessly.
And unfortunately, that's where we're headed, like. There's a facility not far from me on Scotswood Road that makes weapons that are either going to Ukraine or going to Israel. Could you blame Putin if he struck it? Could you? It's like Trump there, or we're only selling them weapons. Either weapons they're using to kill Russians and you're meant to be mates with Putin. Greed, it's all money and greed, but that's it for this one.